Welcome to Sweet Valley Diaries, the podcast where getting your photo in the paper is one teen's dream and another teen's nightmare. Book number 55, Perfect Shot.
Will Shelley Novak lose her chance for love?
So does that make me Miss America?
Well, hello, gladiators, and welcome to another episode of Sweet Valley Diaries. Do you recognize that voice? The sound of an older man's voice? I don't know if it... Does it sound like my voice? Not really. That's not the same. The voice...
No.
Yeah, like voice inheritance doesn't... Well, but my voice sounds a lot like Mom's.
Your voice sounds a lot like your mom's, yeah.
It did when I was a teenager. Anyway, so I'm talking to my dad. It's Don Flaxbart, everybody's favorite.
Your voice is more animated like mine than your mom's was.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. That's how it's like the Mendel's, theory of a hereditary voice structure. I don't know. I'm not all here. I'm on a trip home to Chicago, and it's the second to last day of my trip, and I'm feeling a little bit of that day before you go home ennui.
Yeah, that's me too. I mean, I'm here.
Here we are, nevertheless, spending a good chunk of one of our final days doing, one of our favorite things.
Yes, it's one of the 2 months that's summer in Chicago.
That's true. And we're inside, and we have the air conditioning turned off, and we're going to talk about a Sweet Valley High novel.
Yes.
And the book in question is called Perfect Shot.
Can I just say that when you do the music for this, my vote is for Pat Benatar's "Hit Me With Your Best Shot."
Oh, okay. So
I think that double entendre of the photographer going to winning your heart by taking this perfect picture is just perfect.
well, there you go, gladiators. Dad just summed up the plot of the book in one sentence. This could be the shortest episode ever. We're at like 3 minutes.
I'm going to let you lead this thing, but it seems to me that compared to other books I've read, and I haven't read a lot of these, mind you, this one, where it was going was pretty obvious from the beginning.
Yeah. Well, especially, you're right, the double entendre of the title, Perfect Shot, does refer to two things at once. It's really one of those perfect titles, like chef's kiss titles, where it refers both to Shelley Novak being a basketball player and Jim Roberts being a photographer, and both of them need to be at the top of their game for this book to go off. But if you are thinking, gladiators, like Shelley Novak, Jim Roberts, what? You should know that a few minutes ago before we sat down, Dad, you were like,
yes,
I need to do a quick review to see the characters.
Yes. And then there's the third shot. Will they have a shot at true love?
Oh, sure. Okay. You were just thinking about that while I was continuing the sentence. That's true. That is the third shot.
Yeah.
So, you remember a few minutes ago, you were saying to me, like, I need to cram real quick to see.
That's to remember all the characters' names, because I don't live in this world, so they all seem strange to me.
Well, sure, and that fair enough. But what I then did was like, me too. Let's rattle off. And I'm like, okay, Greg Hilliard, there's Cathy, there's Carol, there's Patrick McLean, we got Jim Roberts, and I was saying, like, okay, those are just the characters that are new in this book. Like, people we've never heard of before this book. So it's one of those. But Jessica and Elizabeth also do play a role, as ever, and some of our old favorite friends. Amy Sutton, we'll get to that. Yeah. But most of the characters, and including the two main characters pictured on the cover, are brand new people.
Shelley's friend Cathy, is she new?
Never heard of Cathy before.
Okay.
Cathy, who I don't know if she even got a last name in
Ulrich.
This book. Oh, her name is Cathy Ulrich.
This is my mnemonic. Remember the name. Novak is Czech. Ulrich is German. French will put in France. McLean will put in Scotland. And Greg Hilliard, I don't know where he goes, but I'm putting him and Jim Roberts in England.
Okay. Well, they're all American, Dad. They're all
oh yeah,
Californians.
But there's Californians, yeah.
But so Shelley Novak and Jim Roberts are pictured on the cover of this book. So shall we describe the cover?
Well, she's a copperhead, redhead, tall, thin, good-looking woman with a come hither stare at the on the cover, and he is looking at her. with a bit of interest and a little bit more.
Yeah, I would say she's definitely striking a pose on this cover.
Yes.
The book describes Shelley Novak as having some kind of unflattering haircut, but that doesn't really seem to be the case here. Like a very workman's basketball player haircut.
She's got a ponytail here.
And she's posing with the basketball under her arm, and she's smizing.
Yes,
she's really like
staring down an opponent almost, kind of, but she's in a cute way. I don't know. It's
yeah. But I think what you're alluding to with Jim Roberts, I mean, I feel like a random person looking at this cover would think this is a danger scenario here. The man behind her does not look like a high schooler, and also he is looking at her in a way because he's got the camera around his neck and he's holding onto the lens, and it's just like, oh, Shelley, watch out for that guy. I don't know. They both look a little bit suspect, but that's just the cover. That's the cover only. In the book. Also, I guess I should say he's got like a matching shirt and jeans happening. Like his shirt is sort of like a denim shirt, and he's got blue jeans on. So that's always nice fashion choices. So the camera story element of the book is brought up right at the beginning, right? There's a photography contest.
Right. Elizabeth and I guess her current boyfriend, or I don't know.
Jeffrey French. I mean, Dad, you've read, it's interesting, earlier you said that you had not read that many of these books, but this is actually the fourth one of these books that you've read. But it's the first one since way back in season 1. I believe it was book 9, Racing Hearts, that you've read that's just like a part of the regular series. So in both of the special edition books that you read, Jeffrey French was not a factor.
Right.
So, yeah. But they've been together for a while. Although the clock is ticking on that relationship. Spoiler alert, Gladiators.
I kind of felt like Elizabeth and Jeffrey were in here a little bit like a Greek chorus. They kind of tell you the mood and what you should be looking for. And other than that, they don't have much role.
Yeah, I think it's just like, these are the characters you know and love. Like, if we're going to fill the whole book with randos, we got to have a touch point with our familiar characters. But so I have a passage I can read that just kind of sums up what's going on with this contest. I'm going to read enough that we can show off a little bit of the writing in this book. Roger Collins, one of the most popular teachers at Sweet Valley High, had told his classes that he would act as a liaison between the newspaper and the students. He would be accepting photo submissions up until a week from Friday. "You've got to enter it, Jeffrey," Elizabeth said with the characteristic exuberance. "I know you'll have an excellent shot at winning. You're such a good photographer." "I don't suppose you're at all biased," Jeffrey teased her. Enid shook her head. "No way. Elizabeth knows a great photographer when she sees one. Don't tell me you're thinking about not submitting any of your work." Jeffrey laughed. "Talk about peer pressure," he complained good-humoredly. "Who said anything about not trying? Of course I'll submit something." He grinned at Elizabeth. "As long as my tried-and-true newspaper pal here helps me decide which photograph to send them." Jeffrey was referring to the fact that Elizabeth was one of the hardest-working staff writers for the Oracle, Sweet Valley High's school paper. Jeffrey was a photographer for the paper, and they'd gotten to know each other through working on the Oracle. But Mr. Collins said the competition is wide open. The judges aren't really looking for anything in particular. Oh, I'm doing Jeffrey's voice. That's Elizabeth. But Mr. Collins said the competition is wide open. The judges aren't really looking for anything in particular, she reminded him. "Yeah, I guess they just want to encourage young photographers," Jeffrey said, taking another bite of macaroni and cheese. "I wouldn't mind winning a video camera. I can think of someone I wouldn't mind taking movies of." He winked at Elizabeth. Enid groaned. "If you two start getting romantic, I'm gonna have to leave," she teased them. "Hold off for a minute, okay?" So, the Sweet Valley News is having a photography contest. There is no category. It's none of this Sweet Valley in the year 2000, a very specific category thing. And Jeffrey's, probably a shoo-in, and the prize is a video camera.
That sounds like a nice prize, although I'm trying to imagine what the video camera looked like back then.
I think it would have been really big. I feel like this is the late 80s, maybe a VHS cassette inside.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Or they were bigger than that, but they looked like VHS cassettes.
And I think that it struck me as slightly humorous. I mean, I couldn't see, it's not outlandish, but that the prize for a photography contest was a video camera, as if they're the same thing. But, whatever, that's the prize, so that's the motivation. And for now, that's all. That's just a little plant. We're going to forget about this contest for a while. That's just a seed being planted for later. Now we're taken to the other big engine of the book, which is there's this big girls basketball competition tournament playoff. And it's like, if Sweet Valley is playing a new school, I'm pretty sure, called Emerson.
Emerson, yes.
I don't know where Emerson is located, but if Sweet Valley can, win best 3 out of
5.
Yeah, best 3 out of 5 in this tournament, then they'll go on to the playoffs.
Who's ever heard of a regional or state basketball, a sports tournament in general, where you play the best 3 out of 5? That's usually for championship league, when you're in a tournament at the end or something. I mean, it's done in tennis, I guess, but that's the only thing I can think of. I've never heard of a...
Well, I think it's entirely possible that the editors and writers in the world of Sweet Valley High knew a lot more about tennis than they did about basketball. We've had tennis very recently. Shelley Novak is the star player, and Shelley Novak is notably 6 feet tall. She's also a high school junior. And that's an important element of the story, too. So the question of Shelley Novak's 6 foot tallness is something that is much ballyhooed in this book. It's something that Shelley feels really bad about. But I think generally we're led to believe that her height, almost nobody really thinks of her height as being any kind of detraction, don't you think?
Well, she has a history of some normal teasing from other girls about calling her too tall or something like that, right? She has a memory of being teased when she was younger. The book does say that she's been the tallest girl in her class for as long as she can remember. Right. But you're right. I mean, basically in the book, that's not an issue with that she's tall for anybody else except for her.
Right. So Shelley suffers throughout this book from a lot of low self-esteem. I mean, that's really that's her issue that she has to get over. Like, that's her problem, and is her self-esteem. And so there is even a moment in the book where we find Shelley wondering if the only reason she scored so many points was because she was the tallest girl on the team.
Yes. Isn't that a hoot? That would be a reasonable thing to think if you're the tallest person on the basketball team.
Yeah, but it's like, instead of thinking like, oh, well, good thing I'm so tall because it really helps me be a great basketball player, she thinks it's as if I don't have any skill at all. It's only my height that is allowing me to do this. So it's like she feels like she's cheating or something. It's complicated.
It's a little bit strange in that normally I would think even a young woman who might be prone to worry about if she's too tall wouldn't worry about it if she had come to see herself as a basketball player, much less a particularly good basketball player. Then all of a sudden you would think you would have incorporated that into your self-image, and clearly she's always liked playing basketball because she's played with Greg Hilliard and his younger brothers, who you can identify for the listeners.
Right. So Greg Hilliard is a neighbor that Shelley has had a crush on for a long time.
And he's 2 years older, I think, or something like that. 1 year older? He's a senior.
Old. So he's 1 year older than her. And at the beginning of the book, she's actually kind of having a hard time playing because she's like overcome with her feelings of obsession with Greg Hilliard. And Greg Hilliard has recently broken up with his girlfriend Carol. So Shelley's kind of thinking like, this is my chance. And there's a big dance coming up that's like actually kind of a combo dance and sports banquet.
Yes.
That will honor the best, sports people, athletes, we call them,
right.
at Sweet Valley High. And it's just like right after the playoffs happen. It's the big dance at the end of the book. So, the big dance was that is a basketball thing.
Oh, the big dance, yeah.
That's what they could have called dance. They could also have called this book. It's interesting, I think, throughout this book, the way that whether or not things are going well in Shelley's life has a huge impact on her playing. In her love life, specifically.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. But so she's thinking about Greg Hilliard. She wants to ask him out. She doesn't totally know what's going on with him and Carol. She wants to ask him to the dance. So speaking of the dance, I did mention that not everybody was sold on Shelley Novak's tallness being an asset. And one person has really consistently, ever since she showed up in town, been a reliably just sort of negative, poisonous influence on everything she touches. That's right, it's Amy Sutton. So here's the passage where Amy and Jessica are talking about Shelley Novak. The cheerleaders, Amy's on the cheerleading squad, and the cheerleaders are doing a lot of cheering for these basketball games, right? I'm sure she can find a date, Jessica added. She's really pretty. Amy laughed. Maybe she is, but she's about 6 inches taller than most of the guys we know. What guy wants to dance with a girl who's taller than he is? No one I know. Jessica couldn't believe Amy sometimes. Much as she thought her friend was a lot of fun, Amy occasionally surprised her with her mean streak. I think you have to be tall to play basketball so well, Jessica said. If we've got a chance this season, it's because of Shelley. Amy wrinkled her nose. I don't think basketball is very feminine. I'm glad I'm a cheerleader instead. Jessica shook her head. I'm glad the girls on the team don't feel that way, or we wouldn't have anyone to cheer for. She laughed. The boys' team didn't even qualify for the playoffs this year. Amy shrugged. Since when are you such a big girls' sports fan? All I'm saying is, I can't imagine Shelley being very graceful on the dance floor. You don't have to make an issue out of it. I just really enjoyed that passage. It's nice to see Jessica being on the right side of an argument for once.
Well, these two people started, in my mind, to come up with the B story, which is a comic story.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, well, let's talk about the B story because it's really, as you said, it is very funny. Amy is really gung-ho about these ballroom dance classes that are happening.
Because?
Well, at first I think she just thinks that here's this great teacher. Nobody knows anything about him. This guy named Patrick McLean.
Yes, he's coming back to town.
So I think that in order to fully appreciate the value of the B story here, we need to momentarily adjourn to the part of the podcast where we talk about boys.
Oh, the beautiful boys, the beautiful boys. I'm in danger of losing my head too.
So before we get to the main event, we can talk about a fellow briefly. I just want to describe a cute guy, another guy we've never heard of before that to my knowledge, unless I'm just forgetting. It's getting to be a lot of books now, gladiators. A guy named Kurt Campbell. Jessica imagined herself floating dreamily in the arms of Kurt Campbell, a handsome senior she had decided she liked. Kurt was a varsity football player, which meant he would definitely be attending the dance. Jessica hadn't really dated anyone seriously since her recent breakup with A.J. Morgan, but she was more than ready to get back in circulation. And dance lessons might make her even more attractive to Kurt. So that's Jessica thinking about why she's going to go ahead and go along with Amy to go to these dance lessons, even though she's not sure there are even going to be that many boys there, and who cares about learning to dance. But then the real main boy event, just let's listen critically to the book's description of Patrick McLean. So I'll start the scene. Jessica is talking to Amy. Other people that are at the very first session of this dance class are, it says that the only boys there are Winston, Bruce Patman, this guy named Jim Roberts, and Greg Hilliard is there too. So 50% guys we've never heard of before, and Winston and Bruce. Anyway, we need more guys, Jessica complained. And guys with names like Kurt Campbell, right? Amy joked. Jessica flipped her hair back over her shoulder. She was about to come up with a retort when the door to the gym opened and the most handsome man she had ever seen in her life walked in. Oh my God, Amy said, grabbing Jessica's arm. Don't tell me that's... Hi, the young man said cheerfully, setting a tape player up in the front of the room. My name's Patrick McLean. He surveyed the group with a friendly smile. Not that many people interested in learning to dance, huh? Well, maybe we'll get some more people interested by the time we're through. Amy was pretending to swoon. "I'm gonna faint," she told Jessica. "Hold me up." Jessica couldn't speak. All thoughts of Kurt Campbell had flown right out of her head. "Amy," she said softly, "if I ever told you I was in love before, I was lying. This is it. I'm gonna follow that man around till the day I die." But, importantly, a page later, Jessica was trying to guess how old he was. He was really tall, at least 6'3", she thought. That's a weird, interesting way to say that, 6'3". Okay. With light, wavy hair, chiseled features, and penetrating dark eyes. With his slender build and European-style clothes, he looked like a model. Everything about Patrick was cool, down to the tiny diamond stud he wore in his left ear. So he goes on to explain that he's majoring in dance and theater at UCLA, and he wants to start a series of dance studios in Southern California. So I'm picturing this extremely handsome, very well put together young man with a diamond stud in his left ear, there's specific, and wearing his European clothes, who majored in dance and theater at UCLA, and yeah, I guess I'm not picturing a fellow who would be particularly interested in dating any girls.
Amy or Jessica.
Amy or Jessica.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about this. You know, these books are so rarely have even like coded gay characters that it's just like, yeah, cool. The book is like a savvy reader knows what's up.
Yeah, and yet he does seem to play with the way he speaks and presents himself to allure people. And he almost hints at that when he says maybe more people will be coming.
Yeah, it's like he knows how hot he is. And he's right. Like, the word spreads that, I mean, we could do the blow by blow of how this dance classes play out, but basically it's a way for Jessica and Amy to kind of be trying to one-up each other. Jessica is so distracted by his handsomeness when she dances with him that she's not very good, but she pretends that it's the greatest joy of her life.
Did it strike you as strange? To me, that this guy is studying dance at UCLA, and his goal is to open up a dance studio. Everybody I know that studies dance professionally wants to dance professionally, not open up a studio. That's what you do when you're
He's just a realist from a very early age. I mean, I don't exactly know why anybody's going to go to the Patrick McLean Dance Studio if you don't have any notoriety other than being a recent college graduate.
I am a very stylish European dance major, and my goal is to teach people old-fashioned ballroom dancing.
Yeah, teach high schoolers how he wants to spread the love of ballroom dance around the world, which again, you know, absolutely a thing that a straight man could want to do. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I got it. Maybe this is on me. I just got an image in my head. So it was that much more delightful to watch Jessica and Amy, and even Lila at a certain point, really swoon over this guy. So we can get back to what happens in the B plot a little bit later. But as long as we are adjourning to talk about boys, here's a quick description of Greg Hilliard. This is Shelley thinking about him. She couldn't stop thinking how good looking he was. He was well built for someone so slender, and had thick dark brown hair, eyes that were a beautiful shade of gray, which we know is the most desirable eye color in the world of Sweet Valley High. With all of the weirdness that goes along with saying that. Okay. He was tall, although an inch or two shorter than she was. So even though he's a couple inches shorter than her, I think that's important, because what's going to happen early on is Shelley's finally going to get up the nerve to ask Greg to go to the dance with her, right?
Yes.
What'd you think of that scene?
Well, she gets up the nerve to ask him. I mean, the big part about that scene is how confused and negative his response to her. Ungraceful, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, and he literally says to her, "We would look silly together because you're taller than me."
Yeah.
Which I don't think he means that as an insult to Shelley, but of course that hits her rawest nerve, right?
Yeah.
You know?
And you would think that somebody who, even if it's just playing basketball all those years, would have some sense of how she would respond to it. And he didn't seem to have any awareness at all. So he didn't seem to be the most socially perceptive person.
No. The other thing that I can relate to this a lot, as someone who has an easy time being friends with guys, that she really bristles when Greg calls her champ. Right? You know, he calls her these, like, he's often talking to her about how proud he is or excited he is about how well she's doing in basketball, which is great. But she hears him call her champ and she's just like, oh God, that's all he sees me as, is this like sports jock neighbor kid who he used to play basketball with. So now that that's out of the way, we can get to Jim Roberts, who I believe asks Shelley to dance at one of these ballroom classes because he's there too.
Right.
And he clearly is pretty into Shelley from the beginning.
Yeah, he's into her, although it's not real clear. He finds her fascinating, but he's not. He's kind of a shy person, and he's not that forward, right?
Yeah, and also we know that he's just enjoyed watching her play basketball. So I'm not sure that he even really knows that he's like into her, but he's excited to be talking to her. I think he's like a little starstruck even.
Well, he talks to her about how she seems real and you know, a real person rather than feigning a lot of stuff as people do in high school.
That's true.
Yeah.
So he kind of wants to spend more time with her. And initially she's a little bit like, I don't really know.
Yeah.
But then it's like she sees Greg and Carol is also at the class. Even though they're definitely broken up, she like sees them go off together or something. Like, I don't know. She sees them dancing together and she wants to, I don't know. She's a little jealous and she's like, I'll just go ahead and spend some time with Jim.
Yeah, Jim asks her, do you want to go get, I don't know, was it coffee or something?
I mean, in Sweet Valley, it was probably ice cream, but a soda, maybe. I mean, I don't think for once the Dairy Burger does not actually appear.
There was no Dairy Burger. No Dairy Burger was harmed in the making of this book.
Yeah. But we got to give an honorable mention now to Cathy Ulrich, the friend of Shelley's, who I just loved in this book. Every time she's so supportive of Shelley, but she's also very no nonsense. Like, she's calling Shelley's bullshit. Because Shelley does this thing of like, nothing's wrong. Like, she has a bad game or a bad practice. And Cathy's like, so what's going on with you? She's like, nothing. And Cathy's like, Shelley, I exist for you to talk to me. Like, I'm your best friend. Like, this is the whole point of me. Yeah. So at one point, you know, she actually really encourages Shelley to ask Greg Hilliard to the dance. And when she checks in afterward and Greg's had this bad reaction, Cathy says to Shelley, if he didn't die of joy on the spot, he's stupid, so forget him. I just thought that was sweet. And she's like, we can just go to the dance alone. Like, you don't have to have a date to go to this dance. And I just thought that was sweet. I like Cathy.
Yeah, Cathy is cute. Although I think all the girls in this book have another girl they're close with, and the other girl they're close with doesn't have the character development that the main one has. Yeah. Maybe that's not true of Amy Sutton, because she's kind of, that dynamic with Jessica is pretty equal.
Oh, no, you're right. Yeah. Jessica, if we're looking at the books as a whole, definitely Amy Sutton doesn't get the character development that Jessica does. I think that's true. But I mean, I don't know, honestly, if we're ever going to see Cathy or Shelley again. I mean, it remains to be seen. Shortly after that conversation, there's a playoff game, and it's kind of going back and forth, and Shelley can't shake her bad feeling about what happened with Greg, and she's just off her game, and they end up losing for the first time. They lose the game to Emerson. And so it's a good thing it's best 3 out of 5.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they'd be out. So then at the game, Jim Roberts has been taking pictures. So here's the conversation between them. Shelley couldn't wait to get showered and changed and out of the locker room. To her surprise and annoyance, Jim Roberts was hanging around outside the locker room when she came out half an hour later. Hi, he said shyly. I just wanted to tell you, but Shelley was in no mood to be polite. Look, she said, her voice sounding more rude than she had intended. I just have one thing to say. I don't like having my picture taken. Do me a favor and dump that roll of film. Jim looked embarrassed. I didn't mean to upset you, he said. Shelley nervously ruffled her short, wet hair with her fingers. Well, she said, you did. She didn't know what else to say. Why don't you like having your picture taken? Jim went on. Shelley stared at him. What am I supposed to say to that? Because I have a bad self-image, Jim? Because I'm a klutz? Because I just missed the shot that could have turned the game around for us? I was wondering, Jim blurted out, if I could take you out to get a soda or something, or take a walk. You know. So there you go, a soda or something. So. And somehow, and that's when she sees Greg and Carol walk by, and she agrees. And it's a good thing she does, because she finds out that she likes Jim. Uh-huh. Like, they get along pretty well. And I think part of what she likes is she doesn't understand it, but she likes someone who likes her, you know?
Right. It did strike me as odd that somebody who's on a basketball team would react so negatively to somebody taking their picture, because that really is part of being on a team.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're good.
Yeah. So Jim does take these pictures, and he and Shelley have a lot of conversation over the next chapter about, you know, whether he's going to take pictures of her or not, and like how she never wants anybody to see any of the pictures that he takes of her. If he doesn't just dump the film. But at one point, Jeffrey French is in the like dark room. There's some sort of dark room at the school that Jim goes to develop some photos, and everybody, it's like Elizabeth and Jeffrey, see Jim's photos, and they're like, whoa, you, not just photo of Shelley, but like, you're on a whole other level. Right.
He's good at, he aims to capture the character of the person he's doing, like a lot of famous photographers have done, you know, in their pose of them or taking of the picture. Just to be clear, most of the pictures that he's taking of Shelley are her playing ball, right?
Right. He's taking pictures of her while she's playing basketball. Right. And there's one in particular where it's like, oh my gosh, it looks like she's floating. Like, she looks so beautiful and graceful. And Jeffrey basically like tells Jim, I mean, there's this whole back and forth between them when Jeffrey's like, you got to submit this photo. And Jim's like, no, I'm not going to. And Jeffrey's like, why wouldn't you do it? And Jim's like, 'cause. Jim is just like, look, I don't want to enter the contest. And Jeffrey says, oh, well, you know, if you were an athlete like Shelley, wouldn't you want to have everybody see this great picture of you? Yeah. And even though he's literally promised Shelley that like he'll never show anyone the photos he's taken, he thinks about it, and he sort of like thinks like, yeah, if this, you know, wins, it, you know, if I submit this picture and like people could see it, like then maybe Shelley will see too, like how beautiful she is. I think the note that I wrote here at the end of this segment, where he finally decides, like, yeah, I am going to submit it. Shelley will see. Then Shelley will see how beautiful she is. The note I wrote was just, oh no, Jim, no.
Yeah.
This is not a good idea. Like,
yeah,
ask her first, at least, right?
Yeah, exactly. But when I read this book, it was kind of clear the direction it was going, and I really thought of a draw by number kind of a thing, because the plot would go here and then it would take a little angle here, but you always knew the shape it was going to draw. You know, it says it's got to bend a little bit this way. So this is one of those bends that went way out there and then it had to come back, you know.
Well, that's true. This one is at heart really, it's a romantic comedy, this book.
Right.
I mean, light on the comedy, but that's what it is. It's a romance.
You're right.
You know, the two characters are really falling in love, but they can't quite see eye to eye. And what happens very quickly after this is that Jim submits his photo to the contest, and Olivia Davidson, who's like the arts editor, sees the picture. Like, he momentarily pulls it out of this envelope and like thinks about it for a second, like, should I really do this? And Olivia sees it and is like, wow, look at that photo. That's amazing. Shelley looks amazing. You might win this thing, Jim, you know. And he goes ahead and he puts it in the slot and, you know, goes about his business. And like, the very next thing that happens is that Olivia sees Shelley in line at the cafeteria, and it's like, oh, I just saw that great picture of you that Jim took. He submitted it to the contest.
Yeah.
It's like, oof, yikes. That was swift and deadly.
Draw that line.
Yeah. And so Shelley is really instantly pissed. Like,
yeah.
The next time she sees Jim, who is blissfully unaware that Shelley knows what he's done.
Yeah. It's not just cold shoulder, it's almost like freezing him out.
Yeah. She says, well, here's what she says. You promised me that you'd never take a picture of me again, and that you'd never show it to anyone if you did. She glared at him. So what do? You enter a picture of me in a contest, hoping it'll get published, so the whole world can laugh at me instead of just you and Olivia Davidson? Now Jim was starting to get angry too. This is the tail end of their argument. Shelley, you're being ridiculous. No one is laughing at you. The whole reason... Once again, Shelley cut him off. Don't you dare call me ridiculous. You're the one who's trying to make me look like a fool by taking a picture of me and plastering it all over the papers. Jim shook his head wearily. Look, we're both being unreasonable, he tried. You broke your promise, she cried, her eyes shining with tears. I don't care what else you say, Jim. How can I ever trust you again? And with that, she spun on her heel and ran down the hallway toward the locker room. So it's like two things at once, right? She has a right to be mad at him for breaking the promise. Mm-hmm. He made a bad choice. But you can hear in her reasoning with the argument how much of an issue she has, right?
Right.
To just the irrational thinking at play here of you want, like, as if his whole plan all along, like, he wasn't even really interested in her. He just wanted to, like, fuck with her by taking pictures so that everybody could laugh at her. It's really warped thinking.
It's also, it seems to me that she has not the slightest empathy for the fact that photography is a hobby and perhaps more than that for him, you know. She just...
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and that ends up coming up in the story, right? Because that's part of the realization that she has to come to, is that it is important for him. This could even be a career opportunity. But now we have Jim's thing, which is that he is very insistent when people ask that, like, no, the photography is just for me. I don't want to enter a contest. Like, he doesn't, I think the subtext there is that he doesn't want to subject his work to outside scrutiny. Mm-hmm. So he really keeps it very private. And so Shelley doesn't even really know that much how important it is to him until, I don't know, somebody, probably Elizabeth, maybe Cathy.
I think it's Cathy.
Cathy points it out to him. I mean, Cathy has a great line. She says, when she's being supportive, like, I get why you're upset, and you're the only one who really knows how you feel about him. You haven't known him for that long. But she says, I think you have a problem with your self-image, Shelley, and that isn't going to go away just by not speaking to Jim. It's something you're going to have to deal with by yourself. And it says, Shelley knew that Cathy was right. She'd overreacted to Jim's pictures because she was certain there was something wrong with her. Deep down, she knew it was irrational, but she couldn't help it. So,
perhaps this is a good time for you to interject about Shelley's mother.
Oh, my gosh.
I guess we could start with the fact that Cathy and Shelley's mother are on the same page in terms of saying that Shelley has a bad self-image and that she's exaggerating how people look at her negatively. She's a beautiful person. And, you would expect that from your mother.
Shelley's mother is
I hope
definitely...
for that, at least.
Right. And Shelley's mother is definitely, over it. Like, she's really tired of hearing Shelley complain about her appearance. And, it's not the most sympathetic thing in the world, but it's not hard to relate to that perspective. But so what happens after Shelley and Jim have this big fight is that Jim gets Mr. Collins to withdraw his photo from the contest. And when Shelley finally, she's had a change of heart, she calls Jim, she wants to apologize, but Jim basically jumps right to, listen, I understand, I'm sorry for what I did, and I took the picture out of the running for the contest. See you later. And then he basically hangs up.
Right.
So they don't get a chance to talk. And then Shelley, really still kind of overcome by her feelings, and she feels really guilty, she goes to Mr. Collins' house. This was actually a Collins Watch 2021. Our first Collins Watch in quite a while. So Mr. Collins is like, I don't get it. Like, why are you asking me? Like, I can't re-enter this thing. The guy specifically begged me to take it out. Shelley looked down at the floor. You know the picture is of me, right? No, Mr. Collins said. The only thing I know about it is that Jim asked me to withdraw it. Shelley sighed. Well, it's all my fault. Jim took some shots of me playing basketball, and I asked him not to show them to anyone. I've always been kind of, she faltered, self-conscious about my height. I know it sounds dumb, but I just don't like having my picture taken. I can understand that, Mr. Collins said gently. He smiled at her. I think we're all afraid of the things that make us stand out from other people. He cleared his throat. The funny thing is, it's usually the things we're most embarrassed about that are the very things other people envy in us. So, Mr. Collins being a good guy.
Yes. For all you aspiring to be taller, this is a real great book for you.
No, so if you're short and you feel self-conscious about it, well, it might just be the thing that other people admire most about you, your shortness. So I don't know if it's accurate advice, but he doesn't say always. He says often.
Often, yeah.
And sure enough, she gets it back in the paper, and so Jim doesn't know about this until he fully wins the contest.
Right.
Jeffrey gets second place.
Yes.
And is very cool about it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
He's like, yeah, Jim is a much better photographer than me. I saw his stuff. Yeah, no way. Well, that guy's great. So now Jim comes to talk to Shelley, and Shelley thinks he's going to be ecstatic, but he's like, I don't understand you. What do you want from me? And they have this awkward moment where Jim even says, I think we keep saying the wrong things to each other.
Yes.
So they are unable to make up.
And they make up in the middle of a basketball game.
Oh, well, before that happens, there's this little bit of time where we know that the picture is going to be in the paper the next day. Jim and Shelley still haven't made up. Shelley's like, well, I guess it's over forever. Mrs. Novak is really excited finding out that Shelley's picture is going to be in the paper, and Shelley is like, don't look so happy about it, Mom. Why would you want your giant-sized daughter's picture plastered all over the paper? Mrs. Novak shook her head. I can't believe you, Shelley. It isn't enough that you win every prize and award there is in the world of high school basketball. The fact that a photograph of you won first prize ought to be a hint that you're a beautiful girl, but you still manage to insist that you're a freak, she sighed. Keep it up, and you just may manage to convince someone you're right. Is that what you want to do? And she says no. And then here is my oh my God moment. This particular passage where I did, my dad heard me say oh my God, with I think a certain key of shock mixed with delight at the next thing. Her mother wasn't through yet. Next time I hear you complain about your height, I'm marching you right over to the children's hospital so you can see some children born with real problems. Then maybe you won't make such a big deal out of being a few inches taller than the other girls in your class. Just wow. It's the nuclear option for Mrs. Novak here.
She had enough.
Some people have real problems, Shelley. Shut up already about being 6 feet tall. I do think it's valid though, the point that she makes about how Shelley wins all this stuff, and now the picture wins the paper, and then she's going to go on to win even more things before the book is over, right?
Yeah.
So literally the only problem that Shelley has in her whole life is her own self-image.
Yeah.
I mean, she's got boy problems, I guess, but...
Yeah. And it's just that one topic, basically. I mean, she doesn't feel bad about how she's a student or anything. I mean,
I think she doesn't only feel too tall. I think she also feels... She doesn't think she's graceful, even though people keep saying she's graceful. Uh-huh. She doesn't think she's pretty. She thinks her haircut is ugly. There's other physical stuff, uh-huh. But the tallness is the biggest thing. But you're right. You said that they make up during a basketball game. So you want to talk about that? Yes,
the game is not going well, and then she sees Jim Roberts up in the stand.
He finally shows up.
He finally shows up. She's been looking for him because they haven't made up, and then she gets this girl. I think her name is Maria Santelli or something like that.
Maria Santelli, good job, Dad.
To run up a note.
Here, you want to read it?
Oh, sure. She sends up a note that says, "Thank you for the most beautiful picture in the world. You said in the interview you couldn't throw it out because you'd fallen in love with it. That's exactly how I feel about you. Is there any way in the world that we can make up? I want to take you to the dance with me tonight." Yeah. Aw, so it's very sweet and very earnest. And she's referring to having finally looked at this picture, which she avoided the paper for much of the day, and actually being able to see
at first she doesn't see anything but her usual self, but she thinks about it. She looks at it through someone else's eyes, and she actually has a change of heart. She can kind of see, like, oh, yeah. People keep telling her throughout
People keep telling her, yeah, before she finally looks at it.
Yeah.
And she's had a bunch of people's reactions independently.
Yeah, they tell her how beautiful she looks, but also how graceful. Throughout the book, but especially after the picture comes out, she's getting a lot of models are 6 feet tall, So it's like, hey, you're, this thing that you're saying is a quality of you being ungraceful and unattractive. The most famous, Lila says something about how I wanted to be a model, but I was told I wasn't tall enough.
Well, there's another girl in the book that says she wished she had her legs.
Yeah, her long legs. Yeah. So, I mean, it's hard for me to picture this photo because in my mind it basically just looks like a photo of someone shooting a basket.
Oh, I think it's the graceful. I have somebody moving through the air with their hand up with the ball in it, like they're going to lay it in, which would be a typical thing for a center who's shooting over somebody. It's just to be reached out, like imagine kind of a ballerina pose in the air where they've taken off the ground, but she's got a ball in her upper hand.
Well, that helps quite a bit, Dad. Thanks. Painting a picture for all of us, gladiators. Jim looks up at her and they smile, and it also gives Shelley the power, the confidence necessary to pull ahead and win the game. Although I did note that it said in the end that they won the series 3-1, which means that if they had lost the game, the series wouldn't have been over. They would have just had to
have one more game.
It would have been tied up. So, okay. Not quite the stakes that you might expect, but that's all right. And so then Jim goes to the dance with her. Oh, but Greg Hilliard comes back up, and he's like, hey. Shelley, that was amazing.
Yeah.
And...
Oh,
he asks her to go to the dance.
Go to the dance, yeah. He said, which in the context of it makes it sound kind of cheap, but he's probably had second thoughts. He's your friend.
Right. The book does kind of set it up like, oh, sure, now that I'm a winner, you want to go. But it is entirely possible, to be fair to Greg.
He kind of shut her down like, that was kind of crude for somebody, that he likes. I
felt like it almost suggested that he saw the picture in the paper and was also like, how pretty, look how beautiful she is.
Yeah.
I never saw her that way. He's known her whole life. Yeah. So they go to the dance. And also at the dance, we have a closure to our B story. Mm-hmm. Jessica and Amy have made a bet with each other about who will dance first with Patrick McLean. He's coming to the dance.
They all are getting to the dance early, and each of them has spent big bucks on a fancy dress.
Right, because it's like they're both sure that they're going to win the bet, and then they're going to win money from the other person that is going to counteract the cost of their dress.
And anybody who's watching a sitcom from the days of I Love Lucy, what happens?
Well, at first she couldn't believe her eyes. She thought she must be seeing things, and she actually rubbed her eyes and blinked twice. But there was Amy Sutton, bouncing up the steps to the hotel, her blonde hair shining, her eyes bright. That wasn't what was making Jessica so crazy, though. Amy always looked good. What she was staring at was Amy's dress. Strapless, lilac, with a puffy skirt. The exact same dress Jessica was wearing. Jessica's eyes widened with horror. Amy hadn't seen her yet. She was too busy skipping lightly up the steps in a pair of silvery sandals that Jessica had to admit looked even better with the dress than the cream-colored pumps she herself was wearing. Then Amy stopped short, and all the happiness vanished from her face. Her mouth dropped open in surprise.
Verbal catfight time.
Well, it is great, actually. Jessica, there's no way we're going into that ballroom wearing the identical dress. I'd rather die. So die, Jessica says furiously. I love it. So die. I mean, Amy basically tells Jessica to take the dress off. Jessica's like, what? I don't have any other clothes. So, but lo and behold, Patrick McLean shows up with a date, a very beautiful woman.
Yes, and my sense of this whole thing is that Patrick's been using the whole dance stuff as a photo op. That's basically what it is to promote his studio.
Entirely possible. So there was a funny moment towards the end of the dance where Coach Schultz, remember Coach Schultz? Dad from Racing Hearts.
Yes.
He encouraged Roger Patman, née Barrett, to be a good racer. It says that he tapped a spoon against his wine glass. Why does he have a wine glass at a high school dance?
I know, this is very unusual. Well, it's a high school dance slash sports banquet.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's kind of wild.
They just didn't really double down on banquet part of the banquet. It didn't really sound like there were tables or anything for people to sit down at. But anyway, Shelley Novak wins the big sports award for being the best sports person. And then there's a dance contest Dr. McLean is putting on, especially for the people that have been doing the ballroom dancing class. And who should win the dance contest?
Well, Shelley is one of the two people.
Shelley and Jim.
Jim is the other.
So Shelley's just winning everything. So it's really okay, you have no problems now. You're just a winner.
Yes, this is a bento box of sports and entertainment events is all I have to say.
Yeah. You gotta pack them all in. You really do have a jam-packed events calendar at Sweet Valley High. And
didn't McLean get out of a limousine with his
date? Yeah.
A limousine to high school sport.
Yeah.
It almost makes it sound like a prom or something more formal,
Yeah, absolutely. The most formal kind of dance there could be.
Yeah.
And Jessica and Amy both in these very expensive dresses.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know what. Oh, I do know what Shelley's wearing. Her mother bought her a beautiful dress as a congratulations present.
Yeah.
For, I don't know. Congratulations for being great. I guess she would have gotten it no matter what, but it was just a nice gesture from her mother. Although I can imagine her mom putting a card in the box that's maybe this will convince you that you're not ugly.
Yes. Sweet Valley is a town where the young women spend big bucks on getting formal dresses, it sounds like.
Very, very true. Yeah. And all the little girls at home can live vicariously, or boys, whoever wants to do that, can live vicariously through the girls of Sweet Valley. I think that's pretty much all she wrote about Perfect Shot, right. Except that Jim is maybe going to have a freelance job at the news now.
Right.
Taking pictures of games.
And Shelley got the newspaper to use him as for taking pictures and to use his pictures of her, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So, but it is because of Shelley that he gets to do that, because they want to get a picture with her, and she's like, no, use this guy's pictures. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
All that's left of The Perfect Shot is the setup for book 56.
Oh, yeah.
Which, as ever, was a little shoehorned in.
Well, I think what was odd about the title is
Oh, sure. Well, you'll get to read that for everybody in a second. But basically, Amy and Jessica are also science class lab partners in this book. And Mr. Russo, the science teacher, keeps on scolding them for talking instead of doing their work and saying that they're behind. And finally, at the end of the book, he's like, this optional science field trip that's coming up is not going to be optional for you guys because you need the extra credit if you want to pass this class, basically. Yes. And so, would you mind teasing the next book?
Will the science field trip go according to Jessica's plans? Find out in Sweet Valley High number 56, Lost at Sea.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe it'll go great. We'll see.
Gilligan with a microscope.
Oh, Dad. Well, I don't think I have to ask you if you're a Jessica or an Elizabeth again. But I could ask you if you're a Shelley or a Jim.
Are
you more of a Cathy?
I'd say I'm more of a Jim.
Sure. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I feel more like a Cathy. If that's an
Cathy's
option.
a great person.
Maybe I just aspire to be a Cathy. I'm a Cathy with the Shelleys of my life, but then there are parts of my life where I'm a Shelley as well.
I could see myself as Cathy. Yeah, I mean, as she is in this book. The thing, like I said about Cathy in this book, is she's a great friend, and that's what you like about her. But you don't find much about Cathy's likes and interests or anything about herself, so it's kind of hard to say identify with not having a personality core.
Yeah, right. I really do. I'm so curious to see if she ever pops up again.
Come on, Cathy. Let's everybody call in for Cathy.
Yeah, gladiators. Call in for Cathy. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts where you mention how you hope there's more Cathy Ulrich in future books. And along with that, you can leave the 5 stars. And also send me an email at sweetvalleydiaries@me.com. Follow on Instagram, Sweet Valley Diaries, or on Twitter, Sweet Valley. Thank you so much for listening. Tell a friend about the show, all the good stuff. And I thank you, Dad, for spending yet another chunk of your life indulging me. and the gladiators who do.
Well, this was actually easier to read than some of the others simply because you knew where it was going.
I thought you were going to say simply because it was half as long. The last 2 you've read have been on the longer side. The super editions. See you next time, gladiators. And remember, if somebody wants to take your picture, just, get to know him. See if that makes sense or not before you decide what to do. I don't know. That's not the advice.
Imagine how everything can come together miraculously in the end.
Yeah. That's some nice closing words of wisdom. Thanks again, Dad.
So does that make me Miss America?
Throw me that extra cushion.
That may be beyond my abilities at the moment.
Ooh.
Okay, don't do that, Siri.
I think I put my phone in the bedroom so it doesn't do whatever bink.
Well, if it binks, don't you have your iPad out here? That's going to bink.
I did. I could put that in the other room.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I'm going to do 2 passes at the
Intro?
At the intro because I have 2 different things that I wrote.
Okay.
Am I ready? I feel very tense.
La la la. What would you rather sit on one of these chairs? It seems like
Yeah, that might be a good idea. Oh, okay. Well,
this cushion here.
great. It's a good idea.
Not very high. My dad's high. I'm doing it now.
All right, this could be good. All right, you want to talk?
Hello, Marissa. Are you there?
Oh, that was very, very, a lot of delivery, a lot of, See, this is what I'm worried about. Like, my brain's not working. Was very forceful.
Oh,